Ian, I'm going to start with you. The basics of the deal, 6 gigawatts over time, AMD accelerators, but also other gear. It's a big deal for them.
Yeah, it's a real endorsement from one of the biggest buyers of this kind of equipment. Obviously, they're playing catch-up with Nvidia, who had their own deal with Meta last week. So this is a real strong affirmation, and it also includes a share warrants as well that are going to Meta.
Riley, this is all about Meta compute. Talk us through just how large the scale is for demand for this sort of infrastructure right now.
It's insatiable demand from Meta. Mark Zuckerberg last month announced Meta Compute with ambitions to get hundreds of gigawatts to fuel its data centers and ultimately reach that super intelligence goal where AI can outpace human intelligence. And this is just the latest in a frenzy of deals. Again, we're anticipating $135 billion in capex this year, but now we know the spending won't stop.
The warrants part is very interesting. It's very similar to what AMD did with OpenAI. There are operational and financial milestones in both directions in order for Meta to potentially become a very big shareholder of AMD. Could you explain that, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, the way to look at it, Lisa Su said, look, this basically ties us closer to Meta. They get these shares if we're in a very good position. I mean, the last tranche, I believe, is about $600. They're, yesterday they closed at less than 200, so we've got a room to go before that becomes a reality. But, her point was that this kind of locks us together and tightens our relationship.
It was really interesting to read through the materials in our reporting, Riley. Like, AMD has played this card before. The emphasis is on inference. So MI450 generation of accelerator, the engineering teams will work together. But the inference part, is there anything unique about this different to what Meta is doing with Nvidia? Because we had a very similar deal very recently.
It's a really good question. Not only is it similar to what Meta is doing with Nvidia, but Meta also has its own internal pipeline of custom chips that it's building for AI purposes. What we heard yesterday is that they see different applications, different workloads here being supported by all three of those verticals. And so they're trying to diversify as they pursue this massive scale in terms of compute.
Ian, take us back to Nvidia, because we've got their earnings coming up tomorrow. And how much does this show that there is anxiety, that companies are diversifying, looking at AMD, looking at their own in-house chips, or actually does it still not a concern? Nvidia is still dominant?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, all we can do is say, look at the numbers, and the numbers, assuming Nvidia comes in and executes on what Wall Street thinks it's going to do, the numbers say there's no anxiety here, all boats are floating, everybody's benefiting from the same massive spending in equal measure. I guess what would change that would be if Nvidia does not hit those targets, does not exceed those targets. That, I think, would change the conversation considerably.
And Riley, the conversation is nuanced when it comes to capital expenditure. Many would say, yes, a lot of it is about the chips, it is about the data centers, but it's also about the power. Can we understand really how much Meta is having to focus in on where they can spend on GPUs or their own homegrown chips, and where they do it globally as well?
So we asked yesterday where they thought they would deploy these chips, and they couldn't specify which data centers. We know that some of their biggest projects are targeting 5 gigawatts, right? But they need to get certain regulatory approvals, and they need energy companies to be able to deliver there on the ground. So as for the merging of the energy and the compute here, time will tell as we home in on where those chips will actually go.
It's probably time for a bit of a reality check, Ian, and I'm hoping that you'll provide it for us. Like, in any given quarter right now, AMD is going to do $10 billion of revenue, all told, every single segment. Nvidia's data center business is at more than $50 billion a quarter. Yes, that includes networking, but they're now one and the same, right? You can't have chips without the other. How do we know if this is evidence that AMD is catching up?
I mean, again, you have to go back to the percentages, the growth percentages. At the moment, both of them would say, this isn't about competition. This is about there's so much demand. A company like Meta, which makes its own chips, is buying from both of us. That would be the answer. But ultimately, when the market slows down, and you can be the judge of when that happens, then we'll see the market share shift, because then it'll really matter.
Meta is not a hyperscaler, but it operates its own data centers at hyperscale, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm thinking back to when Mark Zuckerberg was sat next to the president, $600 billion over the next few years. And then he's also talked about this idea that they might misspend $200 billion here or there, but that's no bad thing. He's front-loading purchases. Just explain his thesis a bit.
Yeah, his strategy is just that. He's used the language of front-loading capacity. They're going to try to get as much as they can, gobble it up while there's still availability. And this, he says, could be applied not just for AI purposes, but for that core social media business, which still drives more than 98% of their revenue, right? So they see applications across the board, and they're not worried about getting too much in the interim.
Ian, why does AMD have to keep giving its shares away?
Again, we asked Lisa about this, and she said that this is Lisa Su, the CEO, and she said this is different than the OpenAI deal. The OpenAI deal is a slightly different arrangement. That is a company, obviously, that is seeking liquidity. Meta clearly does not need liquidity. This is just a way of showing Meta's commitment to what they're doing. You've got to remember that, AMD is only a couple of generations into being any type of presence at all in this market. So if a big buyer of this stuff comes along and says, oh, we like your gear, oh, guess what, we also like you as a company and like your prospects, then that is somehow a bigger validation than just a straight purchase agreement. And that really was what they were pushing as an idea that, look, this is how closely we are tied together.